Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Mr. Is it Calabria? I want to thank you. In a town that we keep hearing people need to be more bipartisan, you were very bipartisan by blaming both the present and the past administration on this item. And I'll just say, in the spirit of bipartisanship, I think a lot of this we've got to recognize wasn't just, Mr. Taylor, Wall Street, but we were really at fault too, I think, in the fact that you had bipartisan effort here. You had one side feeling that we're going to push this almost as a social program, that everybody owning their own house was going to be a great social experiment, and those of us on the other side seeing that home ownership is reflected in political activity, a different involvement in community, whatever. And I think Democrats and Republicans politically have a fault here. And I guess our fault was the feeling that a good thing pushed too far is not a problem. And I think that history has proven, just as the consumer pushed too far, I think the political process and the economic people that say, look, you can make money doing this by selling this product to this group, we just keep expanding the market just by lowering the standard and the thresholds. I think we were all at fault and got pulled into this. And I think, as Greenspan said, who would have thought? My big question here is, no one's talking about a flip side on this. I am hearing in San Diego that there are people out there ready to buy and take these these sales, take these loans over, take over the home, but because we're caught in this system that takes so long, there's massive amounts of market out there that's not available for the free market to take over these debts. Anybody got any answers there, any comments on that? Because I think that we're not talking about, there's the keep the person in the home, figure out how to make them pay. You pointed out the greatest threat is jobs. What do you do with somebody who's not going to have the job for the next year? Do you continue to carry this, and is this the way to go? Or do we also get the other option, that the person with the job who doesn't have a home, who would like to take over the payments, isn't being allowed to access the market because it's basically being frozen by this process? You had a comment about that, Mr. Stepp.
I think what we really need is, we essentially need two processes. We need a process for people who is sustainable, they hit a bump in the road, we can fix that. But we really need a process. John mentioned you'd have people who are, they go through modification, 6 months later it doesn't last. We don't do them any favors keeping them in that situation. So I would say, on one end, we actually are better off trying to get that through the process. And certainly lots of places in California, for instance, it's cheaper to rent the comparable home.
Absolutely.
And I would say it's not just me. Dean Baker, who's a well-known progressive economist, has made this argument that you're better off helping many of these families become renters because they pay twice as much in their home. So that said, I do think you need a different process for people who there's no way that they're going to be able to sustain that home, and we should stop pretending. And then for people who can, and you need to take them on a different track. I guess I would say, as a general overall, I don't think we're doing the housing market a favor trying to blow the bubble back up. The best thing we can ultimately do is to let the prices correct, and people will come into that market. Because one of the big problems with this is, one of the incentives for the bank, for instance, in this net present value test, and for the homeowner, is not simply house prices today, but house prices tomorrow. And even if you did a write down to where the mortgage is at the value of the house, well, if the house value declines another 10% over the next year, then they're underwater again. So we need to make sure these things actually work the first time, rather than continuing to try to chase this.
Mr. Taylor?
Yeah, thank you. I don't know where to begin on this one, but let me first say we have 11 months of inventory, vacant housing, 11 months normally in the economy it's 2-3 months of vacant housing. We're piled full of vacant housing that's available for renting, and I agree that is a viable and sensible option for many people. But remember, when we just say that just let the market correct and put this more inventory out there, first off, it kills the building industry. That's one thing. That's one of the reasons we have such a high job loss. But the second thing is, remember that every one of these keys represents a family, a household, who thought they were getting into a feasible loan. Less than 10% of the people who got these bad loans, less than 10% went to people getting new homes. Most of the stuff was refinancing or taking money out.
Let me interrupt. You're right. Yeah. You're absolutely right. But a lot of this was, the market It was sold as a way of making money too. It was a
Yes,
way of
yes.
this is a great investment. Now, you and I know that doesn't exist within the foreseeable
Pay off your
future.
credit cards, I mean, all these other things.
And the
right?
big one is, are we politically brave enough to say, look, there's a lot of people that got into this looking to make a profit. That profit's not going to be out there.
Mm-hmm.
And the fact is, it's much more cost effective for them to rent than to continue to grab for something that will never have the profit that they originally made, and basically cut the losses, move forward, and actually be ahead if they don't continue. Are we politically brave enough to admit that?
If I could come in on that.
I think the political bravery is also to recognize that there are millions of American families who are hardworking, blue-collar families who simply suffered from, for whatever reason you want to believe, whether you think they bit off too much, or whether the market gave them a loan that they shouldn't have gotten. It doesn't matter.
Well, I think it's both. I think we can agree that it's
Okay,
probably both.
Does it matter that we try to keep as many of these homeowners in their homes as possible? Does it matter to us as people, as members of Congress? Does it matter to the economy? And the answer is absolutely yes. If we continue to watch these foreclosures mount and become more rental properties available, we will continue to watch a devaluation of property values for all Americans' housing and an undermining of
Mr.
the
Chairman, I
American
think they missed the
economy.
point, though. I am being told quite openly that there are individuals who would like to get into this market, but because of the way we are dragging this off, and this gets back to this not giving answers, not being able to close either yes or no in the line, that the other option of being bought out of the hole is not being made available, and it's the government program's delay that you're talking about, Mr. Taylor, that's leading to this other option we go into. Because I think you agree, if it was your children, if it was your friend, you'd say it's better for you in the long run to get out of some of these deals. It's, it's not just an abstract. Thank you.
Yeah, the gentleman's